feel like Ari Aster's working through some shit.
I'd tell him to go see a shrink, but I think we know how he feels about therapists.
Yeah. Okay.
All right.
So let's get into this fucking movie.
Oh, so for the record, at this point, I've seen this movie 3 times.
Really? Why am I
Yeah,
surprised? Of course you have.
be surprised. The surprising part should be that I actually drove to San Francisco for each time.
Okay, that is kind of surprising.
Yeah, it's the only place where you can see. Well, you gotta. It's filmed on like actual IMAX cameras, so the whole movie is in the full like almost square aspect ratio. So they
So,
really don't utilize a proper IMAX theater properly.
gotcha. So yeah, this has been a divisive film, to put it mildly. You either love
I
or
don't
you
care.
hate it.
People
There's
are
no in
wrong.
between.
I love it. It's great. Okay, and just out the gate, like Ari Aster is 3 for 3 with like genuine 10 out of 10 experiences. In my book, honestly, this now that I've seen it 3 times, I can honestly say this might be his best one yet.
Really, I think so.
Yeah, I
Okay.
really do. It is fucking incredible, and we'll get into more about it when we get to spoilers because I have noticed things on repeat viewings that just enrich the experience so much more
I believe
and
that.
make it more of a nightmare. Um, but it's interesting because while his previous 2 movies, Midsummer and Hereditary, were proper direct horror experiences, and they were like legitimately excellent fucking horror movies, like instant classics. Um, Beau is Afraid is a comedy ostensibly, but it also somehow ends up being more horrific than the other two in some ways.
Yeah, because the comedy becomes a bit disarming.
Well,
Uh,
yeah, the comedy is disarming, but then the subject matter it gets into, like, oh god,
yeah. Hmm.
it gets really dark, really really dark, and the ending in particular is just horrifically bleak. Like it's literally nightmare material.
Yeah. You and I saw this at like a pre-screen event
Mm-hmm.
a couple weeks ago, and I, honest to God, even now after a couple weeks, I'm like, man, what the fuck? I still have like, what the fuck was that? And
I
I,
mean, people forget the AMA that Ari Aster did, and someone asked him, "Are you okay?" No, it just 2 words, "You okay?" And his response was just, "Nope."
yep, which is pretty
Sums it up.
on
Yeah,
on
clearly.
display pretty well.
Mm-hmm.
And like I do fall in the part I do fall in the camp of like I liked it. I thought like
Mm-hmm.
it is like regardless of how you feel about it, you have to admit it's fucking going for it.
Mm-hmm.
And just an unabashed, unapologetic personal project
Yeah.
where they're just airing out all their dirty laundry on screen. And you're either gonna vibe with that and you're not. There really is no middle ground for this. For I think based on his previous work and what he's doing now, it's very clear that he's been kind of given free reign to do whatever he wants.
He was
Um,
getting $15 million to make this movie.
yeah, 15
I
or
really
50
doubt it's going to make 50, five
or 50.
zero.
Yeah,
And I really doubt this movie's going to make that back, at least in theaters. As far as I could tell, it was really only showing in theaters for like 1 or 2 weeks.
really. Okay.
Um, it's a weird movie. It's a long movie. It's not a straight up horror movie like the other ones. Like they literally
Sure.
just gave him a check and he was like, I'm doing it. Like, just I don't know when I'm going to get this chance again. I'm doing it, and he does it. And it definitely isn't for everyone. But what really surprised me was, for example, like my dad, who still doesn't understand what the big deal is about everything everywhere all at once,
Mhm.
um, really liked this,
That is interesting.
really appreciated it, because of certain themes that we'll get into later. But
Yeah.
uh, what was most surprising for me was how much he liked it. He actually
Hmm.
said it was really a lot like certain like the surrealist approach is a lot like certain movies that were like European movies from the 70s. It kind of harkens back to that kind of movement. But also in his mind, some of the stuff in there was like a fucked up Monty Python.
I could see that.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
that's the thing. It's interesting seeing where that parallel hits. But I told him, like this is 3 hours long, but Ari Aster cut this down from 4 hours. And he said that he really hopes they release the 4 hour cut because he'd be interested in seeing it.
Yeah.
My dad. So that says something, I think.
That's
When
fair. Yeah, that's a good. Because I've met your dad, and you've told me a lot of what he
wouldn't
likes and what he
expect
doesn't
that.
like.
Wouldn't
So,
expect that. So this strikes me. God, what was it that I compared this to? Like, this is a very strange combination of elements. This is what I personally compared this to was a bizarre blend, tonally speaking, a
yeah.
bizarre blend of I'm thinking of ending things,
hmm
Mother, Sorry to Bother You,
Yeah.
and Happiness.
I
The
haven't seen
Tom
Happiness. I've seen the other two.
the Tom
Uh,
movie from like 25 years ago or so. Really fucking dark, weird comedy.
I would add in because I know you haven't seen this, but it did like tonally, especially in the first half, definitely reminds me a lot of Brazil.
Mm.
Um,
I can't believe I haven't seen Brazil. I feel like
I can't believe you haven't either because that's right up your alley.
I
Uh,
haven't. I just haven't made the time for it.
but like very much like tonally and just satirically, it has a lot of parallels. At least when it comes to like the sequences when they're on the streets, without
Yeah.
giving anything away.
Well,
Uh,
let's talk about that real quick because the movie it technically feels like it's divided into 5 acts.
yeah,
Um, the Although technically it could be argued that our act 4 and 5 kind of flow into each other better than the other ones do. I think that um, there is an element that enters the story for the 5th act, which makes it its own thing.
yeah,
It really is this horrific, nightmarish climax, which is also like Aster has this incredible talent throughout this movie for. I'm in LA right now, so you're gonna hear sirens and shit, maybe.
yeah.
But Aster has this incredible talent for taking genuinely disturbing, upsetting, horrifying moments and dropping humor into the middle of them in a way that doesn't diminish the horror of them, but is still really funny. It is truly incredible. I have never seen anything quite like it.
Oh yeah, like again, love it or hate it, you've never seen a movie like this. Period.
Sometimes that's a good thing. I
Yeah,
honestly, I would like to see another movie like this, but I don't know if anything can really pull it off. Um,
at least not with the same
one
kind
of the
of
things I
just
said, sorry, go on.
as like especially now, at least not with the same like you and I see a lot of movies. We can usually get a good gander where things are going, at least get a vibe of what's gonna happen. You and I
Right.
had no fucking clue from
It was
beginning
so
to end.
unpredictable. And I laughed. I laughed. Here's where you can tell my sick fuck brain. I was laughing at certain points so hard when the rest of the theater was just dead silent in horror. And that is honestly enough, like that only elevates the enjoyment for me on a certain level. Um,
Wait, which scene
but
was that? But like
I can't
vaguely.
tell any of that without spoilers.
Okay, okay.
Definitely more towards the end of the movie.
Oh,
Um,
that is it. That scene.
I mean, what's that scene, Michael? There are plenty of that scenes in this movie. We'll get to it.
Okay.
But there's I was telling you after the movie, and I gotta say it here. At this now that I've seen it 3 times, this legitimately replaces Human Centipede Part 2 as my favorite dark comedy.
You did tell me that. Yeah.
Because the thing about Human Centipede Part 2 is that it's so dark with its comedy that there are people who just will not think it's funny. Um, but if you can, the nature of the comedy is so good, and it's about things that people would not joke about. Um, but the way that it does it, and the way that it utilizes the language of film and even slapstick on certain levels
Mm.
in such really fucked up dark situations, is what makes it really special to me.
Mm.
And then you bring that back around to something like Beau is Afraid, where it has that same kind of really twisted, dark sense of humor, but it does it more elegantly. It does it more intelligently. It has some real substance to the movie on top of it. Like it's just in every single conceivable way, it is an exponentially superior film.
Mm.
It manages to have that element while also being an incredible movie on top of that. So, of course, 100% it's better. But I didn't expect that out of it. I didn't
Yeah.
expect it to be that dark and that funny.
Yeah. I've seen Human Centipede too, so I have no opinion how
I
good it is.
mean, I'm at the point where I've offered to pay Michael to watch it with me.
I
Just
know
so you
I'm still considering it.
yeah, consider it, buddy. I'm serious.
I know you are.
Pay you money to watch Human Centipede with me just because you need to.
Still thinking about it.
I know you can continue thinking about it. But in any case, Beau was afraid.
Yeah, Beau's afraid.
Um,
It is.
so this goes through 5 acts.
Yeah.
The first one is basically on this like intensely urban area. We're talking big city, shitty area. And I saw someone on Letterbox talk about like Ari Aster has some problematic views on homeless people. I'm like,
I don't think that's the point.
I know that's not the point, but it's like I feel like if you look at these portrayals of homeless people and think that someone is saying that this is what all homeless people are like,
Yeah.
never been to a big city like this because I can guarantee you there were parts of that where it just felt like a normal fucking day in certain parts of San Francisco. I've been to those parts of San Francisco. I have friends who have lived in those parts of San Francisco. I have a friend who lived in Soma for a while who talked about how he had to like start racing to his front door at some nights because there was a homeless person who was trying to stab him with hypodermic needles.
Jesus Christ.
This is Soma. This is an expensive part of SF. So, you know, not that far off from what the movie shows. And
Yeah.
it's not problematic. It is a satire. And
Yeah.
it's another thing about this is that this follows on to a lot of Ari Aster himself said that this draws upon a lot of elements of like Jewish paranoid cinema. Like there are certain themes within Jewish American cinema that have this kind of paranoid trope of a main character who's just like afraid of things, and sometimes they're absolutely right in being afraid of those things. The family in the second act, in particular, is like a parody of the overly nice non-Jewish family with clandestine motives. But this movie, if you've ever watched these things and like been into the themes of like overbearing mothers and like guilt and mortal fear and like all that kind of stuff, this movie takes all those themes and just cranks them up to 11, done by Ari Aster. Like if you just imagine the dude from Hereditary doing like a Woody Allen movie, like just it's so weird, but it works really well.
Mm-hmm. Sorry, I just got your email about the next Fast and Furious movie. But
Are you down? I'm so excited. I'm so excited.
That's 18th, right? Yeah, I could do that.
Hell yeah. We ball, baby. Let's do it.
Oh, it's a Thursday. Yeah, I could do that.
I mean, we can switch to the Friday if you want, but it's more likely to be packed. We got some pretty good seats. Okay, so let me just rattle off some of the shit from my my Letterboxd review because I can get some stuff out. Dark, psychologically horrific, filled to the brim with dread and despair, and fucking hilarious. A surreal journey through some of the most brutal and, during one particular sequence, beautiful portrayals of classic tropes and themes of Jewish cinema, including moral fear, guilt, social pressure, the psychological effects of overbearing mothers, and intergenerational trauma. I've always seen Jewish cinema as the closest cultural analog we get in English to the kinds of things we deal with in Persian culture, so it's always been close to my heart, and Aster just drills into this particular genre brilliantly. I tell him to go to therapy, but, well... There's so many delightful little touches. The numerous background characters that are satirical in their own right. Signs, posters, graffiti, a blink and you'll miss it Bill Hader cameo, a fucking Starship Troopers homage. A24 clearly let Ari Aster go wild with creative freedom and a relatively massive budget. I had no idea what to expect when he said his third feature would be a comedy, but it was wonderful to see him return to his short film roots for this surreal nightmare. Unhinged in the most focused way possible. Absolutely incredible. And one last thing. One of my favorite tropes has always been the notion of a protagonist in an insane world that seems to make sense to everyone but them, even as they try to fit in and or survive. Visioneers, Greener Grass, Sorry to Bother You, and The Art of Self-Defense come to mind. I've recently come to realize that this is probably directly related to being neurodivergent, and I've embraced these kinds of movies as the cinematic metaphors that are the closest that neurotypical people can come to understanding what can sometimes be a surreally horrific experience. This includes PTSD. And holy fuck, does this movie hit that mark?
Mhm.
Um, and my favorite review of it though is still the one that says it's like an exceptionally long and evil episode of I Think You Should Leave.
Yeah.
So, beautiful. Chef's kiss. Um, let's see. Joaquin Phoenix.
Always excellent. Doesn't care. Doesn't really matter what he's in.
Yeah,
Even
you
like
can't.
say what you will
Oh,
about that dog shit movie Joker. At least he was still good at it.
yeah, no, like it would have if it wasn't for him, everyone would have seen what movie it really was.
Yeah.
Uh,
Right.
but uh, the supporting cast in this,
Yeah.
from however short they're in the movie, like Amy Ryan, Nathan Lane,
Yeah.
Patty LuPone, fucking Parker Posey, um, and just absolutely fantastic in their supporting roles,
Mhm.
even if they're on the screen only briefly. Um, but it does this thing throughout the movie. Bless you. It does this thing throughout the movie where the main character is constantly bewildered and he constantly finds himself in these situations that he just can't seem to get out of properly, no matter how much he tries to like be polite or do the right thing.
It's kind of
And
like
it,
Big Lebowski in that way.
yeah, in a way, yeah. And it just leads to all of these really funny, like, oh God, this poor bastard. Like this movie
Yeah.
puts me with a fucking ringer. Um,
Yeah, it definitely runs on a hyper realism, which again is
absolutely. Absolutely.
definitely akin to like great satire movies. Like Sorry to Bother You comes to mind.
Yeah.
That's why like I find it kind of ridiculous when somebody says like, "Oh, this is like a bad representation of homeless people." Like, no, it's not. It's hyper realistic. Like that. It's just reality, but
Yeah.
more.
In a sense, if you even view the main character as somewhat of an unreliable narrator,
Yeah,
you could take that perspective as, this is the exaggerated lens through which he sees the rest of the world.
but it's
Although,
clearly not meant to be taken literally, which is the
yeah.
important part.
Well, here's the other thing. As we'll talk about when we get to spoilers, like there's more to that.
Yeah,
But it really is like it is satirical. It is
yeah,
satirical. It is surreal. It is meant to feel like a nightmare. And what it does is so unique and well executed. You could not like what it's doing potentially.
hmm
That's understandable. This doesn't have to be your jam, but you can't say that it's not done really well.
yeah,
Um, and it does this thing sometimes when it pulls up moments where you're like, oh God, and you start laughing. And then suddenly it hits you with something so earnest that you're like, oh Jesus.
hmm
And it's such a roller coaster of an like an emotional roller coaster of a movie. And I really appreciate that about it. The advantage to pull off all those different elements at the same time consistently for its
yeah.
whole 3 hour run. And honestly, it's better the second time.
Okay, now explain how, because I don't have to share that.
I would need to get into spoilers, Michael.
Okay, do you give like a general
I'm just
overview?
saying. I'm just saying there are things about it where the second time around they are better. Partially because the part I can really just easily say is watching things in the background. Because the first time you watch a movie, you're generally watching like the main plot, right? You're
Yeah.
processing what's happening, you're focused on the main character. But the second time around, you can kind of like focus more on what's going on in the background. And there's so much going on in the background of some of
hmm
these scenes. And they're just really weird, surreal, like clearly comedic elements. Um, like the dude, like at the play, the dude in the ladybug costume with the butterfly costume with the cigarette,
Oh yeah.
cranking the sound thing.
Yeah.
It was when it cuts to that guy. It's in the middle of a scene that's weirdly serious, and then it just cuts to this dude in this ridiculous costume, just looking like he does not want to be there, but just doing his job with a cigarette hanging from his mouth, dressed in this outfit. It's it is hilarious. It is brilliant and it's hilarious, but it has no problem dropping you right back into the moment,
Yeah.
you know? So that's it. Like I really do recommend seeing this in theaters because if you can see it on anything that's like an IMAX screen, even if you can't, if you can just see it on a good theater screen, especially in the first half or so of the movie, there are little things in the backgrounds of these scenes that really do help you enjoy the movie. Like there are just so many little touches. Ari Aster said that um he spent a lot of time putting together like fake movie posters and stuff.
Mm,
So when you play Grand Theft Auto, there are all these like parody ads and like all these
yeah.
little touches in the environment. This movie has things that are much like that in the background, and I still have to love. Okay, so there's one point where you see the inside of a teenage girl's room,
Hmm.
and there's a poster on the wall that says Llama Queen.
Yeah.
But the second time around, I took a closer look. It's Confessions of a Teenage Llama Queen instead of Drama Queen, and it's got like a llama photoshopped with like sunglasses and like a feather boa. Just like it's it's incredible. It's one of my favorite things in the movie. Still, like the more I looked at that poster, I'm like, I want that poster.
Someone's got to have released it by
I
now.
want that poster somewhere. I just want Ari Aster to release a PDF, so like high resolution, so I could print it out myself and just Confessions of a Teenage Llama Queen with this goofy ass fucking photoshopped thing. It's clearly like that can't be real, but in this world, it's so fucked up and weird that it's almost like Visioneers, where you're like, this is just. Is that no? That's in this world. That's how this works. Okay, cool.
Yeah, it's also a weird call out to like the 5 people that remember the movie Confessions of a Teenage Drama Queen.
So like that's what I'm saying. It's got all these wonderful little touches. There are things you can barely see that I'm looking forward to like zooming in on later. Like there's a there's a poster for like a death metal band in the background at one point that says something like death by fuck, murder by sex, like just that kind of like the Cannibal Corpse kind of fucking parody. It's kind of like yeah, this movie's full of that kind of thing. But the way that coordinates the weirdly like slapstick and seriously like Monty Python style silly situations
Yeah.
with just this overarching just mood of dread and horror when they're happening like oh god no like just it's brilliant, it's brilliant, it's
Yeah.
100% my jam, and I honestly I think I like it better than Midsummer.
That is
Like it's the
surprising.
whole relationship arc and the like character growth arc that has. It's a totally separate movie, but in terms of the richness of the content and what it explores, I think that Beau is Afraid is just a much more dense and complex movie that has a lot more effort put into it.
It's definitely much more personal than Midsummer is.
Yeah, yeah. I think that's the part about it that gets to me, the personal element of it.
Which makes sense. Because again, it is very much Ari Aster just airing out his shit. Uh, and boy, is there a lot to process there. And I can only imagine, like on the third watch, like the third watch through, it's just like, oh, suddenly I'm starting to get a much clearer idea of what the fuck is going on in his head.
Yeah. God, what was it? It was IMAX is nice, but if you really want the full Beau is Afraid experience, I recommend guiltily asking your single Jewish mother to schlep into the city and babysit your kids so that you can go see it.
Damn. Oh, you sent me that one. I forgot about that one.
There's some just banger reviews for this, but you know that's how that's how Letterbox goes. But yeah, so good stuff.
Yeah. Uh,
10 out of 10,
I mean,
easy.
I don't think we're else I can really add to that without going to spoilers. So you just want to jump into spoilers?
Sure, but I give it a 10 out of 10. How do you think?
For me, I put it more at like 8 for me.
Mhm.
Most because I don't have the same like you.
Wrong as usual, Michael.
Uh,
Masterpiece.
like I don't have the same cultural background that you do with it. Particularly in regards to like Jewish versus Persian culture.
No, it's
Uh,
more just like mommy issues, really. It's
yeah, true.
mommy issues and paranoia of like agoraphobia. Like this.
Yeah. It is overwhelming in exactly what it does, but it is exactly what it wants to be, and there's no compromise to it. Outside the hour of content they cut, apparently. But
I really would love to see what he cut. I'm very interested.
so like I definitely have a huge amount of respect for it. I just don't know if I would ever watch it again.
Um, I do recommend watching it one more time, at least.
Okay, that's fair.
Um, okay, so spoilers,
Yes.
spoilers,
Spoilers. Yeah.
spoiler time, spoiler
Spoilers.
time.
Where do you fucking start with that? Oh, you clearly have an idea, so proceed.
The other movie that this reminds me of, now that I understand it properly, The Truman Show.
I can definitely see that. Yeah.
Here's the thing: the more you watch it, the more you pay attention, the more you'll notice. Because there are characters, for example, there are actors in the movie that show up in multiple roles
Okay.
in different scenes. And you know that last part of the movie where he's walking along the wall of the
Hmm.
company history, and he sees that big mosaic of his mom made out of the
Yep.
employees. If you're paying attention, the employees that make up that mosaic are people you've seen throughout the movie.
Okay. So are we going
Literally every single person in the movie, other than Beau, works for his mother.
so the implication is that her mother literally set everything up from the very beginning.
Not just that, but she's been controlling his life in its entirety in a Truman Show esque level of constantly testing him and fucking with him. Like
Hmm.
hardcore BPD love testing kind of shit. Like
Okay.
for years, she has controlled what he's been eating. She has controlled where he lives. She controls like the supermarket that he goes to across the street. She controls what he watches. She controls everything about his life. And when you watch the movie understanding this, it's fucking horrifying.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. Mm.
Um, there's so many little things about this movie as you go further into it that are so interesting. And it's funny because, like, for example, during the play scene, there's a guy who is sitting in the crowd right as they're sitting down, and he's in a suit. He's just in a nice suit, and he's just asking people around him. He's like, "What am I doing here? Can you tell? Can you please tell me what I'm doing here?"
Oh yeah, yeah,
It's just a guy in one shot, and he's gone. But it's like some employee tried to come to work to where he was told to show up, and he didn't know what was happening.
yeah.
So he's just there where he was told to be, and like doesn't understand why. Um, the looks certain people give him when he does things, the note the mom in the house passes him when she says stop incriminating yourself,
Mm.
the way that the woman at the play looks at him when he hands her the little statue,
Okay. Okay.
um and the way that Nathan Lane acts in particular,
Yeah. Just
because
off-putting enough.
off-putting, he seems like he's overacting, but like the exaggerated reactions he gives are literally just the character being a bad actor, not
Yeah.
Nathan being a bad actor, but the character being like literally pretending to push this overly earnest thing and trying to pull his wife away when he suspects that she's trying to say something. And the morning of that last day that he's at the house, when he first wakes up, you can hear the mom outside on the phone saying like, "Well, that's not in the original contract.
Mm.
I don't care how much more you're paying me." Well, remember, I'm a mother too. Like she's talking to his mom,
Hmm.
coordinating the point where her daughter is going to potentially die.
Mm. Okay.
It's crazy because it's not just a matter of her having this control. It's the fact that people are willing to do this for her. Think about how many people in the movie die.
Yeah, I was wondering about that.
How
Yeah.
many people in the movie die as part of his mom testing him?
Now, does that extend to the veteran guy? Because I would feel like that'd be the outlier.
Yeah.
Okay. Hmm.
And there's things that you think about that you're like, wait a minute. And there's a point where you're like, well, how many of these are rogue elements? Like, how does that work? But if you think about the way that that guy was basically conditioned against him,
Okay. So
Uh,
less deliberate acting, more so much directed to.
sure,
Yeah.
but it makes sense.
It
Uh,
does make sense we put it like that, because it definitely is like, well, hold on. I don't think he would have sent him in to kill the giant penis monster dad.
well, I wonder if she did,
Maybe.
because why would he show up outside that window at that exact moment? They're in the attic.
True. Of the actors, he seems like more unhinged one. So I'm willing to believe more like directed towards as opposed to, deliberately
How would he have found the house?
again, directed towards. Um
So he was just a pawn, and he was, the unhinged or whatever. But if you just think about the different parts of this movie, when you watch it again, really pay attention to how these things are done.
okay.
And for example, the second time I watched it, I noticed like when it's revealed that the psychiatrist has been recording his sessions and sending them to his mom, right?
Mm.
Very first scene, if you watch in the background, when it shows the psychiatrist on the desk behind him, it's all blurry because it's out of focus. But there's a little blinking red light,
Mm-hmm.
like a camera or some
Yes.
kind of recording device. It's there the whole time, throughout the whole thing. And the things that are surreal about this, yeah, there are parts of it that are funny. My favorite one being the eye gouging guy. I think that's one of the funniest jokes in the whole fucking movie.
Which one's the eye couching guy again?
It's when Beau looks out of his window for like it'd be like, oh, I need to get water, and looks across the street and sees like they brought the bottles of water to the convenience store
Oh
because
yeah,
they
yeah.
have water in the building, and he looks at the store and he's like, oh, water, and looks a little more down, and there's a dude just straddling another guy in the street, gouging his eyes out, and he's
Oh
just
right. Yeah, 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 yeah.
grinning at him.
Yeah.
But then when he props the door open and everyone floods into the building, and he goes up and looks at everyone just fucking up his fucking apartment, and it pans over and you see this is hours later. The dude is still gouging the guy's eyes out. He brought the guy upstairs with him, ostensibly in the elevator, and is just like still just doing this to him in the apartment. Like everyone is still doing what they were doing on the streets, down to the tattooed guy taking something out of the microwave and going, "It's hot," and just throwing
Yeah.
it around. Like it's, and when you think about that, these are people that were hired to do a specific thing, and they
Yeah.
just keep doing that thing. These are not even actual homeless people.
Yeah.
In the context of this, his mom hired them to be these terrifying caricatures of homeless people to keep her son as afraid as possible. In that last rant that she says, like, was I doing enough for my son? Has he been eating enough? Is he healthy? Like, have I put enough fear of the world into him? Like she says it in a go where it's easy to miss in the moment of like, but if you're thinking about it, like she says this and you're like, wait a fucking minute, what? Um,
Yeah.
and that's right there. The whole movie is this surreal, partially because this is an insane movie and people would never do this even if they were paid. But the whole prospect is that his mom is specifically controlling his world to be like this.
Mm-hmm.
And when you get to that point and you start watching it from this lens, the movie is still funny, but it's even more horrifying.
Okay, that knocks it up to like a half a point for me. I'll give
That's what
it.
I'm saying. It's a
Yeah.
fucking work of genius, and it's everywhere. The whole movie is made with this premise in mind. That is the twist. The twist is not that she's still alive. The twist is that she's been the whole thing has been coordinated, not just for this instance, but for years. His
Mm-hmm.
whole life has been under her control. It's bonkers. It really is like a Truman Show level of control over him.
Yeah, it definitely fits with the rest of the movie, so I do believe it.
I highly recommend watching it a second time, dude. Like it really is that good.
Okay, okay. You've convinced me. You've convinced me.
This is my top list of the year for sure. This is making it to my top 10.
Oh,
No.
I knew that the minute we left the theater. Uh,
Top three, possibly top. I don't know. We'll see what else comes out. We got Fast 10 coming out in a couple weeks. Who knows what will happen? But yeah, good shit. Really good shit. Deceptively good shit. The kind of movie that not only rewards repeat viewings, but rewards you paying attention to it.
yeah,
I love that. I love that so much. I hope A24 releases a super special edition of it with like the director's cut and like 4K Blu-ray. Like I will buy the shit out of that. I want to see everything about this movie. It is so rich of an experience that you will continue getting more out of it. And
yeah,
that's my jam. 100%. I love it.
yeah. I can definitely see it. Okay, so with that context in mind, I'll bump it up to a 9. Uh, I feel like that's fair. It's like, okay, didn't think about that. That's pretty good. I 100% believe it. That sounds totally intentional.
It is not a surface level movie.
No.
But then going beyond that, with that in mind, the way that this movie dives into abuse and trauma and what it's like to be beholden to somebody that you want nothing more than to show to them that you care about them and you love them. But no matter what you do, they can't believe you. They suspect you of lying. They suspect you of hiding things. They suspect insincerity, even if none of that is present. So that no matter what you do, no matter how hard you try, it will keep coming back to the things you do to care about them being taken as offenses and further just backing you into a corner. And especially when that's a parental figure.
Yeah.
This is when you get into that last stretch where it's like she's still alive and now you get to see all of this stuff. Ooh, that's when it starts getting really intense.
It does. Yeah. And it
And
doesn't let go once it gets there. But
yeah, even that last sequence, which honestly reminded me of Pink Floyd's The Wall.
yeah.
Like it made me think because there's literally a trial. And my dad brought up something interesting, which I thought was fascinating. Because I didn't think about it that way. When I first saw it, the whole movie had already been so surreal that, like, I don't know. But the final sequence is completely like it's likely that it's in his head.
Yeah, it's kind of how I originally interpreted it.
Yeah. Because
Um,
it feels like him just not being able to escape what his mom has built into him. And
yeah,
now,
being a
especially
critic.
that he finds out that, she was hiding something valid from him. Um, but even though he's now technically free of her, he's not free of the version of her that's implanted in his head, where his own conscience trying to argue for him is just much weaker,
Yeah.
ignored, murdered. And then he can't even be heard over the noise of like the thing that's going to kill him. And I think he dies out there on the ocean because where else is he going to go?
Because yeah, definitely it does kind of do a bait and switch during that sequence. Like, oh, maybe this might actually have a happy ending, or at least like one that's slightly better
Maybe
than.
he's free and can live his life now. Nope.
Nope, he's still
Um,
trapped under the weight of constant criticism, constant judgment.
it's inside of
That just been implanted in him over the course of a lifetime.
him. It's in him now.
Yeah.
Um, God, the soundtrack in this, the soundtrack for that whole sequence after he leaves the house is incredible. Um,
I do appreciate just Walking Phoenix's just dumbstruck look as he's walking away from the house.
just like
I think it's how you and I were at that point. We're just like, wow. Or at least I was. That's
I thought it was hilarious. I was
I still
laughing
thought
my
it was
ass off.
funny, but it's still like, did I just see a veteran man stab a giant penis monster that fucking stabbed into him like one of the
Starship
fucking
Troopers,
bugs from
baby.
Starship
Starship
Troopers?
Troopers. Beautiful. Let's see what else is there. And of course the sequence in the middle, which was just him kind of hypnotically being drawn into the play experience, which was clearly meant to like poke at him. But in a way, that performance in the play does feel like the most authentic reflection of him.
Hmm.
It's what he would have been if he wasn't shackled down by all of this stuff. And the way that the pulsing bass tone comes in and out kind of puts you into the same mindset. And it really is hypnotic. The animation is gorgeous. The story does feel like a dark fairy tale.
Hmm.
Um, there is like a mildly transphobic moment in the middle of it for no reason.
Hmm.
But whatever. It's not that big of a deal. I was more bothered by how people laughed at it and the fact that it was in the movie. Um,
Which part was that? I'm having a hard time remembering it.
Sometimes she will appear as a man to you.
Okay.
For a split second, shows the wife just with like a goofy dude smiling. Uh,
Oh, okay. Yeah, okay, fair enough.
yeah, it's a quick moment, but like men dressed as women for laughs is kind of getting dated at this point.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, so ultimately, overall, the movie is just a really incredible experience, and you really do have to sit there and just enjoy it for what it is, and not expect it to have some kind of like through line of a plot.
Hmm.
Even when you know exactly what's going on, you can't really just expect to get from point A to point B. It is a ride through this dude's psyche.
Yeah,
And
it's a fever dream.
although I do appreciate that, when he pulls open the drawer at the beginning and looks at the picture of Elaine,
Yeah.
you can totally see the dead body in the pool behind her. It's in the photo. It's so good.
And I just gotta appreciate the fact there's a point where it literally just shows you like a quick version of the entire rest of the movie, and you still have no idea what the fuck's gonna happen.
Oh, absolutely. Well, I mean, even watching it this time, the shots that they show are not very revealing
Revealing in
at
any way,
all.
shape, or form.
Um,
Um, but still,
and that's another thing. Like when he does the drug in the car, and there's a moment where it's he's thinking back to his mom telling him like you're attracted to that kind of person, and he looks back at the house and sees the teenage girl walking back in with her friend. For a moment, I was like, I am uncomfortable. Is it saying that Beau is attracted to this girl?
mhm.
Um, but no, I think that's a moment where Beau is kind of weirded out by the fact that this girl is even present.
Mhm.
Um, because she is unreasonably insane.
Yeah.
Um, and I don't know. I think there's a connection there that's different from that, where he's just like, it feels like the kind of fake version of something like that my mom would put somewhere, like the kind of person that my mom would think that I was attracted to
Mm.
for some reason. Like she just feels that crazy. And it's kind of nuts because if you listen to her dialogue in that last scene where she kills herself, um, the things she says, they sound insane, and Beau doesn't understand what she's saying. But at one point, she talks about like, you already failed the test.
Mm. Okay.
What does that mean? What was negotiated? When she walks in with the paint, looking that upset, why does she look like that? Why is she already so distraught? It's because her mom has already told her that she has to kill herself if Beau doesn't do something.
Mm.
Because she's just, her parents don't care about her beyond like, you know, at least not as much as they care about
They're being
uh,
offered.
what they're being offered, or what Mona is telling them to do.
Yeah.
Mona just seems to have a hold over these people and everybody in the movie in a way that doesn't really make sense. And I think that's part of the surreal nature of it too. But
Yeah.
that's the thing. There's a lot to consider about this film.
Hmm.
Um, I just find that a really rich and interesting experience.
I'm slowly getting pieces back from the movie. And it's like, oh yeah, it really was that fucked up.
Yeah, you'll get that. You'll get that. But yeah, anyway, that's just a few spoiler things I want to drop, but really do take a moment to like, shit, when it comes out on home video, come over. I'll watch it with you again.
All
Uh,
right.
we can just like it's since we both seen it together, and I've watched it a few times. We can both sit there and be like, "Hang on, pause, check that shit out. You see that? You see that? Like, I want to do that.
Yeah, that'd
That'd
be
be
good. I think that'd
interesting
be
time."
yeah. I could definitely just say just from watching it the one time that like again, love it or hate it, there's nothing else quite like it that I've personally seen. There's a lot of stuff you can compare it to. There's definitely different pieces and references and homages to other films in there. But this is a very uniquely crafted, uh, expensive indie project. Um, that a auteur director was given 100% leeway to do whatever they wanted with it.
Hmm.
And they do, and he does, and it's batshit. And it is an incredibly unique experience. I feel like you should go on to try at least once, if only just to say you've tried it.
Yeah. Um. Yeah. I don't know. I don't know what else to say. Like,
I think it's a good place to wrap it up there.
all right.
All right, cool.
Cool.
So,
Human Centipede 2.
bye. Where's the button? Ah.